Welcome to the first of 3 videos consisting of Light's chances in World Tour. For full context on this episode, this will consist of the version of Light who is on the Gophers and Island and Gaffers in action. Now I will have him on Team Victory here because this Light is definitely going to be hanging around Lashana and Harold. I do think when Light sees Alejandro, he would immediately know the type of man he is, but play it off, acting like he's not a threat. While Alejandro in Confessional would confess he wants to get rid of Light before anyone else, Light in Confessional would say something very similar in his own. Ezekiel would be put onto Team Chris since Noah does not exist within this timeline. Light would immediately call Lashana out for simping for Alejandro, and Lashana would act insanely defensive over it, creating a lot of tension within the group. I also think Light could convince DJ that the curse isn't real or do enough to prevent it to begin with, probably by giving him something animal related that is extremely hard to break. We know that the curse is all in DJ's head anyway, so Light would want to get his head into the game through any means possible. Light in Confessional would comment on how everyone is a lot more stupid than the previous 2 seasons, like they're all getting rid of their brains to further Alejandro's game. I think he'd have a lot of fun telling all the girls off for simping for Alejandro when they have boyfriends already. Back to the series instead of just plot points that would be discussed. In canon, episode 2 would have been a non-elimination had everyone brought back their item, and I think Ezekiel would have a way harder job getting a go eaten compared to a stick. Thus, every team is safe this episode. Episode 3 would start basically the same, but when DJ comments that Lashana wants more of Alejandro due to him saving her and just being Alejandro, Light would comment that he wishes she'd want to win. Bridget would tell him to calm down, she's sure that Lashana has her head in the game. Light says that she better for her sake. When it's revealed they're all going to Japan, Light is shocked and DJ asks if that's where he lives. Light says yeah, but what are the chances it takes place in his hometown? Chris says actually Light, they offered to host it in your hometown for free, so of course we took that deal. Light in Confessional would express how this can be bad if they see more than he wants them to see. When they fall out of the plane, Light is relieved that it's taking place in a studio rather than outside, as he wouldn't be able to hide Kira from the others if they were to hear about its existence. DJ would still be hesitant to compete, but Light would spin a lie for DJ, telling him that as long as the charm he gave him remains intact, the curse won't come back. Ezekiel would want to help, but Alejandro would tell him to relax, his time will come. With this motivation, DJ would try harder, but the panda was just kind of a jerk, so it would try mauling him again and causes his team to get the second most amount of points. When the trailer for the Japan release of Total Drama Action shows up, they all complain that all their voices are dubbed over besides Light, and Light would point out that he knows both languages. It's only natural they chose him to dub it. When Alejandro begins to feed Harold's ego, Light would play into it and tell Harold that all the best producers have directors that actually do all the work, while Harold makes all the money and can get all the women like Lashana. The mention of Lashana would be enough for Harold to agree to give full creative control to Light. Due to Light actually being from Japan, I think he would create one that is very similar to an actual Japanese commercial, with Harold even being pleased because he took one piece of it and overanalyzed it to the point of thinking it's deep and philosophical. So ironically, Team Chris ends up having to go to elimination first for having the worst commercial. As it is, I could see Light talking about how Owen is going to make it further because Alejandro is too stupid to ever consider him a threat. Alejandro would take the bait and eliminate Owen, and in Confessional he'd say, get rid of the person I hate the most here and get rid of a threat. It's an easy choice really. I have to thank Light and his loose lips. Light would be happy about this since Owen isn't someone he can manipulate as easily as Ezekiel, who he needed to make sure stayed in the game. In episode 4, Light would take Noah's role in the beginning when he tries to strap himself in just for the seatbelt to break. When they get to the Yukon and Lashana and Lindsay both hug Alejandro, Light would glare at them and they'd immediately back off. Alejandro would mock him and say, poor Light, jealousy isn't a good look for you, you know. Light says that this has nothing to do with that. Ezekiel would try to hug Bridget just to be rejected. Harold would tell them that they can hug him, but Heather would say nobody wants to hug a twig like him. When Light sees Bridget kiss Alejandro, he'd immediately ask what the hell she's doing. Alejandro would say it was just an accident, and Light would say that accidents create about 41% of us. Bridget would tell him he's going too far, and Light would ask if she remembers Jeff, her boyfriend, to which Bridget would say she misses him. Light says that kissing Alejandro isn't going to help that. Bridget says that he's right, she's sorry. Alejandro in Confessional says that Light is now a big problem. DJ would still pull the sled like in canon, but this time he wouldn't be racked with grief. With Light's words in his mind, Bridget wouldn't kiss Alejandro, telling him that he's a great guy, she just has a boyfriend already and she leaves to go with her team. With this in mind, Team Victory actually win the challenge, and Light tells Bridget good job for not falling into temptation. Bridget would say that she doesn't like how callous Light has been, but he's right. Team Amazon actually would have to go to elimination this time. The obvious option is Heather because Courtney says that when the time comes, she, as in Heather, is going to get it for whipping her. Thus, Heather is eliminated the same way Sadie was. Episode 5 is a non-elimination episode, however, it gives a reward for another challenge, so by default I have to cover it. Light would bring up the idea of bringing Tyler to first class, and Lindsay would agree to do so, with Light bringing Ezekiel. Alejandro in confessional would comment that Light is good. He knows Ezekiel is the most easily manipulated member here since he's desperate to say. Tyler is of course Tyler, but he's done a good job befriending him so far. Light tries to convince Ezekiel that Alejandro is a bad guy, but immediately realizes that trying to talk to him like an actual person will never work, so he dumbs down his language, saying that if he wants to win, he needs to think of eliminating Alejandro because he's the strongest member. If they get to the finale, he will never be able to beat Alejandro. Ezekiel would realize that Light's right. During the challenge, things would go as normal until the baby carriage pushing part, where Ezekiel would be chosen and he would be rather pissed, asking if this is what Alejandro meant by his time would come to be useful. Alejandro would tell him no, that'll come later. Ultimately, the results are the same, but since Ezekiel wouldn't fall asleep, he wouldn't be switched with a baby, so Team Chris win the meat grinder and Team Victory plays second. So there is an exclusive scene where DJ goes to see the alligator in this episode, presumably after the challenge, and it's revealed that it's DJ's pet he lost as a child. I could see him taking Harold and Light along with him in this timeline since the others probably wouldn't want to go with him. I won't include any moments of Alejandro trickery here since it's an exclusive clip, but it would be fun to see Harold and Light's reactions as they just assume he lost something in the sewers. For episode 6, Sierra would accuse Team Victory of being the next to lose. Lindsay would remember Tyler and the rest of the team just decide to go along with it, with Lashana telling Harold to drop the subject for his own sanity. Team Chris would easily win with their electric meat grinder, with Team Victory being second and Team Amazon finishing last. The first part of the second challenge would have Ezekiel facing Lashana, with Lashana obviously winning. Alejandro would tell him that if he wants more major roles in future challenges, he needs to do better than that. Alejandro faces Cody and Alejandro wins. Sierra beats DJ the same as in canon, and then finally Izzy faces Courtney. Truly a match for the ages, and honestly I only say Courtney wins in about 60% of scenarios because the other 40% has her actually taking it seriously, but it's still Izzy, so that's why it goes to Courtney in the end. The next round would be Lashana versus Courtney, which Lashana should win after great difficulty, with Alejandro deciding not to manipulate Team Victory, but now targeting Team Amazon, stopping Courtney from dancing long enough to be shocked and slapped off the platform. Now it's time for Alejandro versus Sierra, where Alejandro would be trying this time since he wants Courtney to be eliminated since she's also a power player. Ultimately, Alejandro is able to convince Sierra to throw the challenge by telling her that she can eliminate Gwen if they lose, convincing Sierra to jump off. Finally, it's Lashana versus Alejandro, and I think now he would throw the challenge since he's gotten what he wanted. This means Team Victory goes back to first class. Alejandro in confessional would say that this is the best case scenario because now Lashana's ego will be even bigger than before now that she won. Cody would want Sierra gone and vote for her. Sierra would want Gwen gone. Gwen would vote Courtney for throwing the challenge, and finally Courtney would agree to vote Gwen off with Sierra to stay, and so Gwen would get blindsided in an episode she didn't even do anything wrong in. Alejandro in confessional would wonder why this is so difficult. Episode 7 is a non-elimination episode. I can actually skip it here. The only thing I will say is that I doubt Team Amazon goes right since Sierra and Cody both want to go left, and I feel like Courtney would be the same way, so chances are they don't have to do a fake elimination revealing Cody has always voted for Sierra. Episode 8 is interesting because in canon Team Victory were dominating this challenge and they only had Lindsay trying to help. With all of them together, I think it would be way easier for them. However, I could see Lashana beginning to try and take reins as leader of the group, which they don't appreciate since her suggestions don't really help. In fact, they're already doing perfect without her guidance, so Team Victory would get first and Lashana would gloat about her team making first. Bridget would ask what she means by her team, and Lashana would say she misspoke, still getting glares from everyone else. So, fun fact, Team Amazon originally gets first in this challenge, and that's only with 3 people helping, so even if Cody has to help Sierra through her fake sadness, Courtney should be able to do this alone and make it right before Team Chris wins to send them back to elimination. Ezekiel would try and plead his case about how evil Alejandro is to the others with the justification that Light said he was, so it must be true, but nobody is really listening, so despite having the best of intentions, Ezekiel gets voted out in a 3-1 vote, where Alejandro points out in the confessional that if he hadn't done that, he would have just voted out Izzy. But he does thank Ezekiel for being stupid enough to expose Light for him. Ezekiel still clings to the plane, this time because he wants to save his team from Alejandro. Episode 9 is another non-elimination episode that ultimately means nothing. However, Light would try and patch things up with Lashana, but when she doesn't apologize, saying she's been leading this team to many of its wins to begin with, it throws the team back into chaos, causing their first loss of the season as everyone is not in a good mood, which makes Crispy in a good mood. Episode 10 and Izzy eliminates herself again. This probably will remain the most constant plot moment in the entire series. Just a shame the best song of the season won't get to be played since both people who sing it are gone. Team Victory are now split, and during the second part of the challenge where they all need to work together to race and get a good time, Lashana would refuse to go unless Light admits she was right about everything, and Light would eventually agree in annoyance, but at that point it's too late and it's over for Team Victory. Lashana would realize how bad this looks for her, as Bridget would tell her that a real leader doesn't let their ego ruin the team. Lashana would try bargaining by saying from this point on she will lead them to a victory with no ego. At this point though, everyone is tired of Lashana and her leader persona and decide to eliminate her. Episode 12 would change quite a bit, since this time the team that captures Ezekiel and the team that captures Duncan both would get immunity here. In the end, Courtney would still be able to capture Duncan, and I could see Ezekiel getting Alejandro out, but not Tyler, intent on having him win, return to the games, and eliminate Alejandro with him. However, due to Team Victory, they would capture Ezekiel, meaning Team Chris are the losers, and Duncan would automatically go on to Team Chris. And both Duncan and Alejandro would vote for Tyler, but that's fine since he doesn't have his Duncan kissing Gwen plotline to fall back on in this timeline. Episode 13 is a non-elimination that means nothing in the grand scheme besides having a moment where Light and Alejandro get to face off for the first time this season. Episode 14 would change quite a bit from in canon, since I could see Harold taking the same alien Tyler did in canon and hitting the same landmine he did as well. DJ would actually fall to the ground due to the explosion and hear a crack before looking at the charm Light gave him at the beginning and realizing it's broken. DJ in confessional would cry knowing he ruined everything and Light's efforts were for nothing. Due to the alien being mush at this point, Team Amazon and Team Chris win, sending Team Victory back to elimination. Light would convince Harold and DJ to vote off Lindsay since she's the most expendable member right now, but when it comes time for it, DJ forfeits the competition and tells Light that he broke the charm that he made for him and he's cursed again. Light would yell to DJ that the curse isn't real as he leaves. Episode 16 would have Courtney actually put an effort in the challenge, unlike in canon since Duncan and Courtney are still together in this timeline. So to throw a team off, Alejandro talks bad about Tyler with Duncan throwing Lindsay off her game enough to tell Alejandro off like she did Heather. The three teams are able to get another guess in, which Team Amazon gets a sheep with their symbol first, and then when Duncan jumps again, he gets the Team Chris one, right before Team Victory shears the sheep and reveals it's the one with the symbol on it. Had Lindsay not told Alejandro off, they would have gotten second. At elimination, the votes are pretty clear, and Lindsay is eliminated, but she gives a heartfelt goodbye and tells the team to take Al down for her. Episode 19 is the first merge episode and also is the introduction of Blanley into the competition. One man will not be able to go into the first part due to there being 9 players left, and after some negotiating from both Alejandro and Light, they'd be able to convince Chris to give immunity to that person since they won't have a fair shot. They both comment on how the other is pretty smart and appear friendly with each other, but in confessional they both point out how much they hate the other person. Blanley would also be manipulating Bridget, bonding with her over Jeff, but in confessional Blanley would say how much he hates both Jeff and her. Cody would be with Sierra, Courtney and Duncan would be a pair, Alejandro and Bridget would be a pair, and finally Blanley and Harold would be a pair, with her revealing that Harold is a current fan favorite. Courtney and Duncan would still win the challenge, but I doubt Harold would be nearly as bad as Owen, meaning that Light could convince her to join his team. Blanley would comment that she loved the act he did at the end of action. "I realize now manipulating others is wrong. Come on, we all know you were lying." Light would ask if she really thinks so little of him, and Blanley says that if he admits it, she'll vote for who he wants. He admits it was all a lie, which Blanley would thank him for, but at elimination, Harold would get eliminated with Blanley in confessional saying that she already made a deal with Alejandro. This would infuriate Light, who lost his closest ally so early into merge. Episode 20 is the China Challenge. Light would be looking to become allies with Sierra, and she agrees on one condition: if they reach final 3 together, he has to forfeit the competition so she and Cody can be finalists. Light hesitantly agrees due to his current desperation. Sierra tells him that so many people thought he was faking it when he apologized, but she thinks he meant it. He's not the same Light he used to be. During the first part, Blaney would tell Light he's really popular right now. Light would say that he doesn't really pay attention to the fan blogs. As he's talking, Blaney karate chops him and Light wipes out. In confessional, Light says that he's definitely taking her down, and then Alejandro. Instead of Courtney helping Alejandro, she would help Duncan, so Alejandro quits the second round. Light would point out that Blaney is getting real meals in the final 3, with Duncan being revealed to have cheated in round 4. Sierra still gets the real food and wins the challenge. After the challenge, Light would demand Blaney leave tonight. Sierra would agree, but when asked why he doesn't eliminate Alejandro, Light says this challenge wasn't satisfying enough. He wants to see Alejandro lose after his ego gets shattered. Blaney, on the other hand, is a fly on the wall that needs to be swatted out of this game. The second most amount of votes would actually go to Duncan, since Blaney would convince Cody and Alejandro that Duncan and Courtney will win the game together, even making Cody afraid of the potential since he has even noticed how much better Courtney has played ever since Duncan returned. The other two, being Duncan and Courtney, would vote for Light, as they thought that was always the plan if Sierra won immunity. Due to the 3-3 vote, Duncan and Blaney would both get eliminated here. Episode 21 is the Capture Zeke challenge. Alejandro would steal Courtney's balls while assuring her he was just as shocked as her when Duncan left. Due to how much Ezekiel hates Alejandro, he would jump onto Alejandro just for Courtney to not be able to win and Alejandro to be able to use his hatred for his own gain, as he smashes a tranquilizer ball onto his forehead, knocking them both out and winning Alejandro immunity. Alejandro would get Cody and Courtney to vote for Sierra since it's easier to convince Cody to vote for her. Sierra, Bridget, and Light would vote for Courtney, and they'd have to have a tiebreaker where the first person to knock someone out with one of their remaining balls will win. Alejandro would realize he screwed Courtney by stealing her balls, not even be able to hide it well, as Bridget is able to see his worried expression. In confessional, she says that she thinks Alejandro had something to do with her not having ammunition. As she gets blasted by Sierra, she complains about not having any balls, which at this point Chris doesn't want to hear. Episode 22 is originally a non-elimination, but due to the cast number it has to become one. I could actually see Bridget winning this challenge and giving her something to do after so many episodes. Light would tell Alejandro that he really hates to do this, but he wants an alliance to get rid of Sierra. Alejandro asks if he really thinks that he'll fall for that, and Light says to listen. He's a smart guy. Sierra isn't normal. She's smart but crazy. At least with each other, we're aware of the extent of our abilities. With Sierra though, who knows? Alejandro says fine, today you're not my target. At elimination, Cody originally already votes for Sierra, so nothing would need to change, and Sierra gets blindsided as she cries about how she was supposed to be in the finale with Cody. Episode 23 would have Cody have a renewed sense of self, and during the challenge I guess the most fitting thing to have happen is to have Light and Alejandro sing "This Is How We Will End It" together. I could see Light remembering Cody's birthday and giving him a chocolate bar he stored since his last time he was in the first class. Bridget would ask how he remembered that, and Light would say because they're friends. Light in confessional would just say that he memorized all his castmates' birthdays before arriving. When they all build their dinosaurs, Bridget would build the crappiest one even if it is big. Light would build the dinosaur about Chris, Alejandro would build the best looking one, and Cody would build his little one. When they have to vote for the best that's not theirs, Cody would pick Light's, and so would Alejandro and Bridget, since she would die before ever giving Alejandro something nice. Light unfortunately would pick Alejandro's, giving him a prospector kit while Light gets the digger. It's not even really a challenge for the second part, as Light just wins immunity. At elimination, Alejandro would be able to convince Cody to vote for Bridget, since Light is most likely to take her to the finale compared to him, and Cody can't really argue with that, so it would be a 2-2 vote tied between Alejandro and Bridget, and Alejandro destroys Bridget to remain in the game in any tiebreaker. Episode 24 is an aftermath episode, but it's an important one as it determines a reward for the contestants. Harold would definitely compete for Light, winning him the second place prize, as Courtney would serve for Alejandro, not being convinced he's evil, and Sierra surfing for Cody. Alejandro wins the first place prize. Episode 25 is a non-elimination episode, but the winner doesn't have to compete in the final 3 elimination challenge. It would be the first match between Light and Alejandro, as both would take the train. However, during their battle, I think Light ultimately gets outsmarted and kicked off the train. He still manages to tie for third in the end against Cody. Episode 26 is the finale, and for the first part it would be Light versus Cody dueling, and Light is winning, let's be honest here. Cody may be a lot of things, but a capable combatant is not one of them. Thus, he gets eliminated in the final 3. Alejandro would choose Duncan and Courtney to be his allies in the finale. I know it was Tyler first, but Tyler gets immediately knocked out. Light would choose Harold and Bridget, and things go a lot like in canon, with both sides having a tough time until the end where Alejandro would reach the top. But right before he's able to throw it in, Ezekiel suddenly appears and tackles Alejandro to the ground. After a brief battle, Alejandro is able to throw Ezekiel off the volcano. He prepares to throw his effigy into the lava until Light kicks Alejandro in the nether region from behind, causing him to fall on a block of ice before Light begins his victory speech.
Oh, Al. I have to give you credit. You were by far my most difficult opponent. Your ability to adapt on the fly was commendable. Any lesser person would have lost weeks ago. But there's one thing you never realized, Al. These are my people.
He kicks Alejandro off the volcano before throwing the effigy into the lava and either getting a win or accidentally throwing Alejandro's in to give him a win. Ezekiel wouldn't jump into the lava this time, instead deciding to leave, happy that Alejandro was defeated, and everything from this point on ends the same. But what did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, and if you enjoyed, please consider liking or subscribing to the channel. It really helps a lot. Special thanks to my Discord members, and if you want to have your name in the description of the video, all you need to do is join the server. With all that being said, thank you for watching and have the day you deserve.